Hadi from Usdor.
Hello everyone, this is Hadi and I'm on Unmatched. This is my podcast, and some of you know me as Sayed Hadi and I'm the TUC Organising Award winner of 2024. I'm really proud today to introduce my guest to this podcast. But before I do, I'd like you, as a listener or viewer, just to shut your eyes for a second and come on a journey with me, because this will set up exactly what this person actually does. So just imagine where you are right now. You have the perfect day. Everything's going fine. No issues. Suddenly, something happens. It could be an earthquake. It could be a fire. It could be some kind of major incident which is going on, like a terrorist attack, or far worse than a terrorist attack. A foreign country invades and attacks your country because they see you as the bad guy. With all your heart, you survive everything. You make it back, you find your family, you get whatever belongings you can take with you, along with your friends and other people who are feeling the same way, and you make your way across to another country which is going to be a safe haven, your neighbors. Except that they've closed their borders. They've closed their borders either because they cannot cope, or far worse than that, they do not want to be associated with whatever the political situation is where they could be deemed to be the bad guys. And then suddenly, the only place that's available to you is where you've learned the language of English in school. So the nearest place that you feel comfortable to get to is the United Kingdom or the USA or Canada, predominantly English-speaking countries. The journey itself is treacherous, it's perilous, you're hungry, you're tired, but somehow miraculously you make it across to that country, especially if you're in the UK, you make it there. But you think your problems are over, except now that other problems are beginning. You have to have housing. You have to be the protector still for your family. And you have to go through mountains of bureaucracy, as well as the local hatred that's being put against you just because of the situation that you've come from. Eventually, you overcome all these hurdles, and now you're looking at becoming employed, but you can't get employed in the role that you was working in when you was in your country because your qualifications are not recognized in the new country. So you have to start at the bottom. Wherever you can get the job, that's where you access the job. Whether it's security, retail, cleaning, but it's not the job that you want or can do because of the systems that have been put in place against you. But you are very thankful for where you are and you want to give back. And you want to make sure that people are fed, your friends and family are looked after, and you're contributing to the society that's helped you. But when you go home and you've got more and more issues, more hurdles being put by legislation, who do you turn to? And this is why I'm introducing my guest, Tajwar Shelim. Tajwar works as a campaign organizer for Migrant Voices. It's a migrant-led national advocacy and campaigning organization building a community of migrant voices to call for justice for all. Taj mainly works with migrants and refugee rights, supporting the communities and working alongside policymakers to enact real change and get at the heart of the issues. Taj was called to the Bar of England and Wales in the summer of 2021 and has been a caseworker for refugees and asylum seekers for over 6 years, providing legal advice and support both in the UK and abroad. Taj was born and raised in Windsor. His family runs a curry house and owns it as well, and he spends most of his time working with local food banks and other charitable initiatives. I'm really proud that he is here today to be my guest, to be able to highlight much of the challenges that migrants face working. Remember, these guys are not classed as expats, they're classed as migrants. And what we're going to go through is a lot of the struggles that are out there, and hopefully, just hopefully, anytime that you walk into a retail outlet and you see someone who doesn't look like you, doesn't speak like you, doesn't sound like you, just understand they've come through a different journey than you. Taj, thank you for being being my guest today.
No, thank you so much for having me and the opportunity to
You there, Taj?
speak on this platform. Can you not hear me?
Thank you. And thank you for being here. So when we're looking at something like this is a multifaceted area that deals with much more. But in your sort of position as a campaigning official, right now, with my introduction, was that similar to the experiences that you've faced with the migrant story coming to, or migrant workers coming to the UK?
So I guess with that one, it really depends on the position. So a good way to kind of get our headspace in the right place is for us to think about migration as the topic itself. So more than 1 million people come to the UK every year. When it comes to illegal or legal migration, 98% is legal migration. A lot of that is people coming in on a skilled worker visa, on the health and care visa, visitor visas, and it's only actually 2% that come in through humanitarian protection, asylum, refugees. Most of the people we work with are those on the legal routes coming in to work and support the country, working in various jobs and fields, generally given to what the government or the Home Office is asking, where there's a shortage occupation list. That small 2% is the refugees and asylum seekers. And because there's no safe and legal routes for them to come, a lot of them make that perilous journey throughout Europe, where they can go through pretty much a whole European tour of Hungary, Italy, just to get to the United Kingdom. And usually this is because this is where their family is, this is where their connection is. They actually might even just love the country and they've always wanted to come to the UK. And English is the most common language in the world for most people. Media, news, everyone knows English. And a lot of these people have learnt English, but they haven't learned like Hungarian. So it makes sense for them in their minds to think, okay, I can't live in my country anymore. I'm at real risk of death. And England has always been that place where I've always seen I can speak the language, my family's there, that's the place I need to go to. And like that's their rationale and thought process.
I'm doing a quick review today on I bought in a TikTok shop. A showerhead. Now, a showerhead is actually really good because if you live in a place which is like a flat where you've got a coffee boiler or you haven't got access to a power shower and you've got gravity-based shower water feed, then this is ideal for you because it does multiple settings. It converts the water into, as you can see, sprinkle, waking you up in the morning, getting you going, moving it forward. And if you had a hard day at work, or in the gym, or wherever, if you've been training hard, this is the massage setting, and it will make sure that you're reinvigorated. So, get yours on the TikTok shop today. Link is in there, and if you guys don't know how to do that, you don't need to go back to school. So it says, you know who.
Yeah, and that seems to be a lot of the story when I've dealt with a lot of my colleagues that have come from different countries, working within certain environments, so like the retail environment or security. Again, they get qualified, they get involved, they get the job and start working on the ground where they're very, very visible. to the point whereby they can be exploited by some very unscrupulous media hunting, media headline hunting politicians. And we've seen it. We've seen it time and time again that people get exposed in this way.
Definitely. One
But
thing.
tell me what was.
Oh, sorry, go for it. I was just going to say, when it comes to. You go.
I think there's some kind of internet issue at the moment that I seem to have a delayed response here. But don't worry, guys, it's all part of the magic. But yeah, here we go. So, I mean, what made you actually take this road? Because you went, you studied you studied law. You went to the bar. You could have gone into any other legal environment, but you went down this road. Why was that?
How much time have we got, really? It's one of those ones where I am myself a product of the environment. So, like, we're the first kind of Bangladeshi family in Windsor to kind of come here. My dad grew up in Southeast London, and then my granddad came here to work in the factories in, again, South London, East London in the 60s. My great granddad used to work in the Merchant Navy, and that's how we kind of came to the UK. We're about fourth generation now. But yeah, my dad always wanted to have that kind of dream of a curry house and to do it in Windsor. It's always been like, the royals are here, there's a castle, and now I can literally see the castle outside my window. It was always kind of his dream. But for me, growing up in a very white middle-class town, it was always noticing the little injustices, kind of, especially when it came to me. And that kind of stuck with me throughout school. And I always wanted to be like a huge instrument of change. I'm currently at home now in Windsor, and around my room, it really hasn't changed since I've been a child. So I've got Muhammad Ali, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X, all of these kind of big leaders. And I guess growing up, having male role models or people to look up to, I was looking at these people who really wanted to make change, just because of seeing the unfairness and injustice. And I always thought law was the gateway to change. It's like this universal principle that we all accept kind of from the get-go, that if you abide by these laws and principles, you can be a functioning member of society. If you really want to make change, you go through the law. And I was very idealistic when I was young, and kind of almost the hero complex was also definitely there, where I was like, okay, I'm going to go to study my hardest, get into university, get into law school, and become a lawyer. And that's how it was going to be. But I would say on the journey, either through my undergraduate or through law school, you lose a lot of that idealism and it comes more into realism. And you see kind of just how difficult and resistant the law is to change. At the end of the day, it's not sometimes a gateway of change and justice. Sometimes it's more of a hammer and anvil to uphold order. And that sort of order isn't sometimes a positive order, like one that can lead to an ideal world. Sometimes it's very restrictive. And I know we've all probably had some issues with the law at one point in our lives, being like, we don't think that's fair or that's unjust. And it's only really in this country, politicians and our government that can make those big changes. But politics in itself is quite resistant to change. And for me, why I wanted to get into the human rights sphere was always just because I always saw the most marginalized in society, the ones who've kind of been through it all. And I am a young, hopeful idealistic. I love the idea of hope. And when you said it in the beginning of your podcast, talking about people who have had a wonderful life and really enjoyed themselves, and all of a sudden some political things happened and now they've had to flee their country and everything they've known. I've spoken to so many people and worked with hundreds of those individuals, and every single one of them, they have no right to be hopeful. They have no right to be happy. They have no right to accept anything that's happened to them. But every single time I talk to them, they still remain hopeful, and they remain some of the most steadfast, resilient people I've ever met in my life. And to me, that is so crazy. How can I not do what I can do to help you when you yourself have just done such an amazing feat to even get here and still try your best? And that really kicked in when I was in Madrid. I used to work as a caseworker for a couple months, and this was a whole crazy story. So there's a map behind me there. after university, I basically spun a globe because I was like, I want a new adventure. And I was young and I didn't want to travel like backpacking in Asia like everyone else. I wanted to work. So I spun the globe. First time I ended up in the Pacific. Wasn't going to be an oil rigger, really not for me. Spun it again, landed in Madrid. And I was like, okay, let me look at human rights organizations over there and see what's going on. Joined the Spanish League of Human Rights as a caseworker. They thought I was a fully qualified solicitor. I just had an LLB and about 3 months of Duolingo. And you really just see the reality of how tough the situation is. I had like 10 to 15 cases immediately of really, really terrible. And I'm not sure how like PG I can like sensitive I can be in this podcast, but we're talking about torture. We're talking about violence. This was during the regime in 2018 under Maduro in Venezuela. And some of the stories I won't like say again, but traumatizing stuff. And when you're just 20, how old was I at the time? 21 years old. And I went to like, I've never been one too much by my emotions. It's hard to disassociate and it's hard just to even listen to it, let alone work within that sector. At one point, it's some of the most beautiful and like heartwarming and meaningful and impactful work you can do. But it's also, if you're not like mentally or emotionally prepared for that, it can break you. And it's like, it's one of those ones I'm always worried that one day it might be just too much, but I'm still here and I'm still working. And the reason I switched to Migrant Voice and kind of a bit more community focused is where you can have kind of the support networks around you. And even when you have those tough conversations, you also have space to come away from it all. And in terms of making change, the huge issue I had with in Madrid was you're just facing a legal system that's going like, no, 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 no. So every single asylum seeker refugee was just rejected. And a lot of them disappeared. A lot of them definitely, I know, passed away on the channel or things like that. When I'm working here in the more campaigning space, it feels like I can do a bit more to change policy in government, where we can write to the Home Office of the government, we can share stories of those who are like suffering and really just get more people to listen and understand where these people are coming from, and not just the media narratives going like, they're all coming here in an invasion, X or Y. I'm like, just speak to them and like listen, understand where they're coming from. And like, that's the most basic thing we can do as humans, is just to have that level of compassion and not have other people give us our opinions, let us find out our own opinions. We're human beings. We all have like a critical understanding. We can make our own decisions. We don't need to like push false narratives. And that's the bit I want to try to do in this role and in this job.
Hey everyone, you might be lucky to get safety boots from your employer. And these are absolutely fine to have, but guess what? They don't necessarily have the right supports and can leave you feeling aches and pains, especially in your arches at the end of the day, leading to fallen arches. So make sure you get some arch supports. These are useful. They slip into your boot and give the same comfort as trainers, enabling you to walk around all day long, doing all the heavy lifting, no matter what the job is that you're doing, and you won't feel any pain at the end of the day. They will leave you feeling really good at the end of the day, so make sure you order yours at the TikTok shop for the price of less than a packet of chips.
And you are, and I mean that wholeheartedly, because where I met you was at the Southern Regional Conference at Asdor, where you brought in a person who was a migrant worker, who was a professor in his home, came across, ended up working in retail, and worked his way up, again, through their own volition. And this is a story that people don't get to see. They don't see the legislation. They don't get to see the hurdles that are put in place. They don't get to see what the fees are, because unless you're from an ethnic minority, BAME background, you're not going to ever witness it. And right now, we've just come out with 14 years of a party leadership, where they should have made the processes easier, more transparent, but actually confused the matters even more, made it harder, not by putting up more hurdles, but just by complicating the legislation well, yeah, and contradicting. That made it down to the interpretation from judges. So putting more money into the court that way and into lawyers' fees. And again, you then had the right-wing media, which is discussing and talk out left lawyers. Well, there's no such thing. It's lawyers. They have to follow the rules of the law that are set down, by the government. And then the judges have to interpret that law based upon what's been given to them. And because of the inadequacy of the Conservative Party at the time in power, well, we've seen it time after time after time. They did not do enough to actually make things easier for the courts, and that's why we have such a backlog in terms of the Home Office, the civil service, and for migrant workers as well, who want to contribute. It's the sort of biggest kind of frustrations that have happened during your time as a migrant voice campaigner.
So no, I completely agree with you on all those points. And I feel like I've joined the migration sector at the absolute worst time, where nothing gets better and everything gets worse every other week. And we're so busy putting out fires that we can't really be proactive in the sector. It's so reactive. And I agree, a lot of the issues we're facing is because of, I wouldn't say neglect, I'd say it's purposely driven to make the hostile environment as bad as it could be. But we're in a crisis mode right now when it comes to legal and illegal migration. And it's not the way everyone else is saying it. It's because in terms of where we are in policy and rhetoric and understanding, we're losing out all the important facts, and we're not talking about the things that actually matter. We're just talking about kind of like stop the boats or an invasion. And like on that kind of bit, I've already kind of given you the percentages of the numbers. But if you really wanted to stop the boats, and like the government should know this, and the previous government did know this, you create safe and legal routes in the areas where those kind of hostile issues are taking place, where asylum seekers and refugees are coming from. That way, over there, you can check and to see if they're genuine asylum seekers. You can take the families as well, rather than being like, it's always men. Because I've heard the stories and the journeys. Single women or women and children have a much higher risk of not making that journey, a much higher risk of exploitation, a lot higher risk of sexual violence. And it's very, very commonplace within those journeys. Even if you're trying to survive and run away from all that, like you want to get there and try to bring your family across. Like I feel like if I had a partner, a wife and kids, I couldn't imagine asking them to make that journey. Like I wouldn't have the heart to do that. So like you really have to understand that position from them. But when it comes to like stopping the boats, and we're paying France, let's say like 500 million to handle the border crisis and everything. But if we just work together collaboratively, sorting out the issues in the area, we'd stop the process altogether. And I guess with the backlog in the courts, it is reducing now. But this is just another thing. I'm going to speak more in the legal world. The courts are really struggling. We've closed down all the courts in COVID. We don't even afford to heat them. Barristers, everyone talks about like lefty lawyers and making money. There is no legal aid. Barristers and solicitors aren't making any money right now. They're just working a lot of them pro bono, and there's not enough advice to go around. So a lot of the reason more court backlogs are happening is because there's so many people out there without genuine access to legal advice. And the one like beautiful thing we have about this country is that everyone can get a lawyer. Everyone can get legal advice. Everyone can get defended to the highest level if you've been accused of a crime in this country. That's a staple thing of British society that we hold to. And I'm really upset as someone in the legal field that we're losing that. And we're not even just losing that in like the refugee asylum sector. We're losing that in criminal. We're losing that in so many other areas. And that's a thing that really needs to be funded. And that's a really like, hopefully now with Keir Starmer, a barrister as Prime Minister, that's something we can change. And that will inevitably fix a lot of the issues. But in and itself, in terms of like policy and procedure, the immigration rules, so the thing that handles legal and illegal migration, and as someone who specializes in it, is so confusing. It's thousands and thousands of pages. It's not like one piece of legislation. It's just built and like added and added and added and added. So you're just like, I struggle with a degree and an education and specialty in it to see what the current policies are. Imagine being a refugee or an asylum seeker or a migrant, like a legal migrant with a visa, to understand what's going on. Where it becomes that most of the people we work with are people on visas, people who are working in the NHS, people in social and care homes, people who are working in skilled jobs. They're like, yeah, of course I had to get a lawyer. I had no idea what's going on. So when every single person for a visa has to get a lawyer, you're just creating so much extra backlog and issues for ourselves that we don't need. Like, where everyone's saying, we have no money, we have no budget. Streamline some of these issues and maybe we can see a route out of it, because that's what we need. We don't need more like hard right kind of, because at the end of the day, people are here. We've got these issues now. We can work together collaboratively and sort them and make our country better for all of us, because we all deserve that. Or we can carry on just kind of bickering and being like, oh, these are the issues we've inherited. We're not going to do anything. We're going to leave it at that. Because I want to be hopeful for a government. I want us to collaborate and work together and be hopeful about a future, and not just think we're going to go through the same things again and again.
Hey content creators, this is my chance to do a quick review of a product I bought on the TikTok shop, and I think you guys are going to love it. It's a green screen disc that fits on the back of a chair. It can fit to almost any surface, and if you've got a area like a flat or a single bedroom or a bedsit where you're living in where you've got no space, this is ideal for those who are using it for things like Twitch, streaming, or just general YouTube videos. Like so. So get yours in the TikTok shop today. I'll leave the link in here.
Hopefully it will change. And again, being a trade unionist, one of the questions I had asked you was, what can the trade union movement actually do to help migrant workers? Again, for any trade union, is to increase the membership. And the good thing about trade unions is that you can have access to decision makers, not only within companies, but also within legislation as well, because we liaise with the government, on policies, on things like health and safety, equalities, how to streamline things like taxations and make it easier. So in this sort of sector where we're dealing with new workers whose definitely first language is not going to be English, it could be even their fourth language in some cases, what would you say, look, this is what the trade union movement need to focus on, this is what they need to do, and to help to make their lives, the migrant voices heard?
I think that's a great question. I will start by saying I think unions are an amazing thing when it comes to community, when it comes just to the history of it, community organizing to give humans and rights to the majority. Unions have always been there from the get-go in terms of the power they hold. And that's the thing I always sometimes forget, that we are the collective and we together are strong in our numbers, not that one politician. It's the tens of hundreds of thousands of people in the unions who are working, and we're the ones who are making this country tick. And there's so much power when you can do a go on strike. It can shut down a country. It just shows you how much power we have as a majority. But then also, all of that majority, look at who's in the room. And you said it perfectly there, Hadi. There will be migrants there. There will be people whose languages aren't English, but they're still your colleagues. They're still your friends. They're still your people you work with every day. And you can't forget that just because they weren't necessarily born here or their family wasn't born here. They have to pay an extra 10,000 for them and their family to stay here, and we don't. What's really fair on that? We're in a cost of living crisis. Why do they have to spend £10,000 extra? And when you look about kind of the rights they get, a lot of the people we work with on legitimate visas in the health service, in the NHS, they're like, oh, I couldn't get housing because my landlord didn't believe that I had leave to remain. And now I'm homeless with my 2 kids. Or, oh, I had to pay my visa cost, which is going up every single year. They pay £1,000 to use the NHS, even though they already get taxed to use the NHS. They end up paying £2,000, £4,000 a year on visas. And they're literally working to keep our health service or to keep our stores or to keep our restaurants afloat. and they don't make incredible wages. Why are we punishing those who've wanted to come here and like help our society? And as a union, I think that sort of compassion is really strong in unions to understand the struggle of a worker. I mean, the struggle of a migrant worker is a real thing too. And when you look at the employment bill, employment rights bill, and you actually look at a lot of the time exploitation of a lot of these people, these are things unions, in terms of their strong grounds and their passion, and the people who are listening to this and the people who are in unions, they're all so passionate about, but they don't know those stories. And a lot of the time, because migrants are afraid to speak out, wondering, will they take away my visa, or why would anyone care? But we're a compassionate country, of course we care. And it's those things that I feel like we need to get those stories out more. We need to like show solidarity with those suffering from paying visa fees, because we're all suffering with the cost of living crisis at the moment. And it's that kind of just, you're not in alone. And in terms of change, really just collectively talking to politicians. And now Labour's in charge, and Labour have traditionally been an ally of the unions, being like, this is an injustice. These are our colleagues. These are people working in our sectors, and they're really struggling. Like, we can't stand here and idly watch while this happens. And I think for me, that can be the gateway and the symbol of change.
You must have dealt with a lot of cases where sometimes things didn't quite go the way you wanted it to. And that must take some kind of toll on you earlier, in terms of, you know, some of the stories that you listen to. So how do you cope in terms of what you've had to deal with in the past? How do you disassociate it once you've, because there must be times that it stays with you. I know when I've represented people, it stays with me. A lot of the things I've heard, a lot of the harassment cases, a lot of the victimization cases, some of the times, you know, even personally, you know, or grandparents probably through. And I'm here to actually in this position to defend those that can't fight those battles properly. So what does it feel like for yourself when you go for your day-to-day, or especially if it goes not as well as it should do?
It's a great question. It's a tough question. And I won't say I have the answer. It's one of those ones I don't think anyone ever has the answer. It's just working with how individuals can best do it, right? I really get into the work I do. I'm always kind of wear the heart on the sleeve and will always do my best kind of person. And that's really, really tough in this sector, because you ain't going to get what you want. You ain't going to just do your best and you're going to change the system. And that's very tough for someone like me to like accept. So, but that's not going to stop me. I think at the end of the day, I know who I am as a person. I know my ideals and my values, and that's the most important thing to hold. So when I do my day-to-day job, I take it at that big one that I'm just an individual in an endless machine and cog, and the odds are always against me. But the odds have always been against me. Since I was a kid, since I'm a grown man, since I'm an adult, in the future, the odds will always be against people like me and people like us. But that doesn't mean you don't stop trying and giving it your all. If anything, that just makes it a bit sweeter. And especially when I was going through all my own mental health things, and I was like, what actual difference am I making? What's the point of doing this all? But if everyone who had the similar position, the similar drive said the same thing, nothing would have ever achieved in this world that didn't have meaning. At the end of the day, struggle and hardship and suffering are things that make us human. If anything, it makes us the most human. So I'm more than happy to take that responsibility and that burden and wake up every morning and being like, here we go again. Because even at the end of the day, if we don't live the fruits of our labors, our future children will, and the future world will. And isn't that what we should be striving for as like grown adults in this world? I don't have too many needs or wants or desires. Like, I don't believe that we can achieve like perfect happiness or utopia in this world, but it's not meant to be. But that doesn't mean you're not supposed to fight for the things you believe in and the things that really matter. And especially because I want kids one day, and I know I'm going to be a great dad, and I hope I'm going to be a great dad, but I want to be hopeful for my kids' worlds, and I want to be like you'll have a climate, and you'll have a world, and you'll have an economy, and you'll have to be able the opportunity to do what you want. And I can't do my day to day and not believe that too. And I can't work with the people I do who have so much hope in themselves that they don't have hope in me, or that I don't have hope in them. So even though it's really tough on some days, and I'm sitting there like, what am I actually doing? The next day I'm going to get up and do it regardless, because that's just who I am, and that's what needs to be done if we want to make change. And that's not changing the whole world or changing everything and the whole policy of migration. I'm not going to fix refugees tomorrow, but if I can just change the world around me and change it for the better in my circle, and if let's all make a commitment and do that tomorrow to change our worlds, then that's how you actually change the world. And it took me 29 years to realize that, but I'm finally beginning to understand that's how real change comes across. And when you see it in that way, it's a bit easier, because all you need to do is be the best you can today, and that's all that's ever asked for you. And I think that's my final takeaway for anyone listening, if they could kind of just resonate with that point.
It is a really good point, and that was one of the that I actually gave to one of the younger, newer reps who's had a couple of young kids himself. I said every single change that you make here today is going to be a better workforce for your children tomorrow, and that's a great power that the trade union movement does have, and I'm really proud to be a part of it and being able to influence many positive changes. Yes, you do put a target in your back. Yes, you're putting your head above the parapet, and yes, you can be victimized, or for even to the point where you can lose your job for standing for the right thing. But at the end of it, there's a hole in, and we're doing it for a better reason. And I'm really proud that I'm in this position right now to be able to say, look, guys, this is what other we can do here, and showcase and highlight that there are more things than what the media can show. The real sides of things, the real elements of the trade union movement, how we constantly are battling, but not in the same way as portrayed, like, oh, we're constantly going out on strike. No, there's a process to get there, and there has been a huge cultural shift from the 70s and the 80s to where we are now. But that's not recognized, because you could be dealing with someone who's a cleaner, and the next moment you could deal with someone who's a manager. They're all members of the trade union movement, and all have different needs. And I think with this, what we're seeing now is a lot of migrants going into middle areas in certain industries, working their way up. And we're also seeing the children of people across as migrants or refugees, like born Pakistani. So I know what it was like in the 80s when my parents were going through it, and especially my mum, because I grew up in the council flat areas, we weren't affluent. So seeing all those things has always played an impact in representation and fighting for rights. And again, from a Muslim background, we believe in justice, and making sure that we do our part. I get that. That's not exclusive to Islam only. It's in all religions, and you are in that forefront that you can deliver help, justice, support, and a better, brighter tomorrow. And you're right. I think with Sir Keir Starmer coming from a legal background, being head of public prosecutions at one point, he has a very strong understanding. And with Yvette Cooper now being Home Secretary again, she already has very strong understanding of the mechanisms of government, as well as the civil service. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but it's going to work. Now, I'd like to finish off on the following things, because I always like to deal with a positive, which is we've talked about the frustrations, fees, costs, that kind of thing. But I want to deal with a better tomorrow. So what do you feel should be happening, either within government or on the ground, to like what we could do today to help create a better tomorrow?
What could we do today to make it better tomorrow? I think there are many things, and I think it really depends on who you are as a person and what your strengths are and what you want to do. And at the end of the day, to make change, you'll kind of have to want it. So at the end of the day, how I understood and wanted to make changes, I read, I learned, I wanted to know. It is things like listening to podcasts, speaking to colleagues, speaking to friends. It's making connections with those around you. And stories are the biggest gateway of change. And what we do at Migrant Voice is showcase the stories that truly matter to change narratives. When we live in a world with 24/7 media, and especially look what's going over across the pond, and I won't spare too much about it, but it's really, really worrying that a lot of that has probably been created by the bubbles of social media and what's on the news and TV. But they're not the real stories. The real stories are out there. It's your neighbor, it's your colleague, it's your friend, your auntie, your uncle. Those are the stories that you need to know. Those are the stories that will shape you. And once you learn who the people around you are and like the beautiful history behind them, the things that make them unique, the things that make their hearts yearn, the things they're looking forward to, you're going to turn around and be like, we're all the exact same human beings, just trying our best out here in this world. And once you've kind of got that belief and understanding that we are all together and we are all a movement and a group of people, then you mobilize together. But you need to be together. We can't just see each other as different. And I'm saying that also as a Muslim guy. I go to the pub with my friends. I still feel the same. And like we treat each other like brothers despite being from two different worlds. But when we go to the pub and they're all looking fine, I will get oddly looked every once in a while. And like, that's okay. Because the people around me in my space and my connection, they don't care. And those are the things will change within time. But you can't do that without having a conversation. So like what we need to have is conversations with politicians, with the media, with the world. And we need to tell these stories and we need to share the real facts and not force narratives on us. We need to create our own narratives, ones that we're proud of and that ones we can actually look outwardly and be happy about. And that's who I am as a person. And that's what I want to share across the world. And, but, you know, God willing, one day that will happen.
Well, it's about proximity, you know, and it's quite clear that's what this is all about. It's being close enough to be able to influence people. And again, that's why I love this trade union movement as well, because I have got access to those people, you know, I can talk to them, I can find out. And not just on the ground, but also in the right places where policies on a company level can be changed. And we're seeing it on a day-to-day basis. Yes, events going on across the pond in terms of social media, so on and so forth. As much as that may challenge in the future, what we've seen with things like TikTok, you know, where they exposed a lot more of the news that was going on in Gaza than was just showcased by the, you know, the narrative changed completely. So, you know, I've got great hope that the tech companies are still going to do okay. Even if some of them are pushing for Trump. But yeah, you can't silence the voices. And things like this, where I'm very proud to be meeting someone who's on the ground, working it through, making it happen. Tajwar Shelim, there's no denying it. You, sir, are unmatched when it comes to these kinds of things. I'm really proud to have had you as a guest today. If anyone wants to contact Migrant Voices or wants to get involved in any of your campaigns, how would they go about doing this?
No, thank you so much for having me, Hadi. Really appreciate the opportunity and the time and the platform to speak. So we're working a lot right now on the visa fees in terms of the unjust costs, and we're having a conference at the end of February. The best way to get in contact, go check out our website, look at the work we do. We take volunteers from time to time, but also just kind of keep spreading the word, sharing the stories. We're on social media. We're no longer on X, but we're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, and our website has all of the work we do. To get in touch, info@migrantvoice.org. I work at campaigns@migrantvoice.org, or simply Tajwar@migrantvoice.org. All works depending on kind of what you want to see and hear from us.
Yeah, that's been absolutely wonderful. Taj, thank you for taking your time out from a very busy schedule. We've actually been trying to arrange this since November. So thank you so much for being here today. I really do appreciate this. There's a lot of people who were quite, when they heard I was going to have, they were extremely excited about it. So I can't wait to see what their feedback is. Thank you again. Tajwar, guys, for being part of this, and please do get in contact. Be a little bit more kinder to everyone. If you guys don't know how to do that, you all need to go back to school.